So yeah, tell me a little bit about you. Tell me
what is there to tell? Well, I'm in
what
Canada.
Jacqui on the other side of the world is doing.
I'm in Canada. My friend Crystal, I believe she might be in New Zealand. She says New Zealand is her favorite place, I think. She likes to go all over the place. She's a copywriter, and yeah, we're friends and a part of this Avalon Empowerment Coaching group. That's where we get our training for coaching. So yeah, Jacqui in Canada is a nurse. I work in the healthcare industry as a nurse. I'm still working part-time, but also doing coaching and just increasing the coaching capacity, because healthcare is great, but it's a lot mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I find that the coaching just makes my heart sing a little bit more.
Yay.
And yeah, I love helping people in that way. I love helping people establish transformation, whereas I'm finding when it comes to the Western medicine model, the problem is always outside of them, and we're just slapping Band-Aids on all of their problems. And over on the other side with the coaching, it's like, but we have real results here, you know?
Right. Amazing. And so did you have, I call them Mac trap moments. So I always say that we have taps on our shoulder and then 4x4s in the back of our head, and eventually we have a Mac trap moment. Did you have a Mac trap moment that made you step into coaching? Did you have coaching yourself, or?
Even just my own personal experience, right? Like, I mean, everybody's experienced trauma at some level. I've had childhood trauma and just things going on in there personally. So, you know, I was rather angry, anxious. Both of my parents struggled with mental illness. So that was not a pretty sight for growing up in. And, you know, it's not... I know other people have had it worse, but it's not about really, you know, putting it on a spectrum of what's better or worse in terms of trauma. Trauma is trauma, and it's really all about how one perceives things anyways. So, you know, I too was struggling with depression, continuing the cycle of that. And I could see how it was affecting my kids. And I'm like, oh, no, like this is a strong, absolute no. This is not going to pass on to my kids. And so, you know, for probably last 10 years, maybe a little bit more than 10 years, I got introduced to the coaching world and the services that coaches provide. And especially with the transformational tools that they have, the company that I got my training from, it transformed my life. Like, I did do the counseling thing, but I think where I was at on my journey, I was needing more than counseling. I'm gaining the understanding, like counseling and psychology or psychologists can help with the people who are not ready, willing, or able to invest in themselves. Like, they're the ones that kind of bring them up to the place where they're actually, you know, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy, where our basic human needs, they're helping those people get their basic human needs met and like be sustaining those sorts of things. Whereas coaching is for people who are, you know, wanting to get out of the depression, wanting to get out of the anxiety. And I'm not saying that psychology and counseling doesn't help with that, because they certainly do. But, you know, in the years that I did counseling, mostly as an adolescent, it was just kind of like go in to see my counselor week after week and just have the verbal diarrhea of what's going on that week, which was sustaining me from week to week. Was it moving me forward? Not really, because I was a teenager not going to school. You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't giving me the capacity to hold space for actually, like, I was kind of going to school, but when I was attending classes, I wasn't doing any work. I didn't have the capacity for it, right? So I didn't find that helpful. And then into adult life, you know, I had this inkling or fire inside of me, rather, that's like, I need to do better for my kids because I can't live off of a McDonald's wage. Like I needed to do something else, which is what brought me into healthcare, because healthcare, you have a job anywhere. It doesn't matter where in the world, they always need healthcare workers. So it didn't matter what in healthcare I was doing, I would always have a job, which is a blessing and an evil in disguise. I'm not really sure what the saying goes with that, but it's like kind of shooting myself in the foot, because I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. But I've spent most of my life as somebody who's working for someone else, being in healthcare, right? So I haven't actually built the neurology or learned how to be an entrepreneur. I'm getting there, and I am beginning to, or rather, I have built some neurology in order to be an entrepreneur. But there's still that like 3 feet from gold to get over that hurdle, so that I can actually let go of the nursing career and rely on my coaching as my income. But because it transformed me, right? Like, I don't struggle with depression. I don't have suicidal ideation. I'm not struggling with anxiety. Do anxious feelings come up? Sure. But you know what? I recognize them for what they are, and I can shift that into, I'm choosing to be excited about this. And the coaching world has brought me on a journey of incredible self-development, self-growth, learning about myself with all of the amazing tools that are out there. It just opens up your eyes and allows you to see things from a different perspective that you may never have thought of before. And when you can put things into that different perspective, then you are more able to respond to life situations instead of being reactive. And that's a huge difference, because I think a lot of people in the world are just reactive. Something happens, react. Something happens, react. But when you have that self-development and you learn about yourself and how you operate in this world, you have a situation, you're like, oh, well, what does it have to do with me? And how is that a problem for me? And why am I feeling this certain way about this situation? What is my part in this situation? Because if it didn't have to do with me, it probably wouldn't be presenting itself in my world, right? So instead of react, you ask all of these questions, you take that pause, and then you're living life different, right? And it just opens up so much more possibilities, so many more opportunities, and the universe responds. So
I love that. I love this. Yeah. I'm loving this Jacqui and Jacqui talk from across the world. We're definitely in sync for sure. What I call that is that you're a system disruptor. So you've seen that, if you were to continue your family line, it would just perpetuate into your children's lives. So you've gone against the status quo. What's that been like, going against the status quo for you, like with your friends and family and society? And what sort of experience have you had?
It's hard. It's really hard because you feel like the outcast. At the same time, it brings joy. And recently, I had a conversation with somebody who was really defining the difference between happiness and joy. And I can't even remember who I was talking to. It was literally within the last couple of days. And they said, happiness is going out and grabbing your ice cream cone. Happiness is, having a nice meal with your family or friends. But joy is about having meaning and passion in your life and feeling purposeful. And, this self-development makes me feel purposeful. And that leads me into, my kids are living the life of my dreams. And that's incredible. Like that just, is so amazing. I'm like a brand new grandmother. My daughter, she just recently had a little boy. He's just over 2 months old now, and she's 25. And I was 19 when I had her. I cannot say that my mothering her is anywhere remotely the same as her mothering her son now. And that's amazing. I mean, yes, I wish I could have been for her what she is to her son. But I did the work so that it's happening now, because otherwise the depression, the anxiety, whatever other mental illnesses were attached to that would have just continued. Right. And my son, he's also flourishing and doing really well in his life as well. So that is incredibly rewarding. And that's the payoff, right? Like okay, sure, I have to be this outcast, or feel like an outcast, because I'm not actually an outcast. I find my community. I find my people that are my supports, and they're the ones that lift me up, hold me up, and give me what I need. And it's resourcing, right? So, along my journey, I wasn't always very resourceful. I didn't have a community. I wasn't very social. I thought of myself as an introvert, and recently learning more about human design. I'm not sure if you're familiar with human design. Yeah, I don't know a lot about human design. Like I know a little teeny weeny bit about it. I do know that I'm a manifesting generator. I do know that much about myself. But one of the things that I was brought to my attention as I was talking to this person recently about human design, I had filled out like some surveys with her, not specifically surveys, but assessments. And she's like, by nature, you're an extrovert. And I'm like, what?
What?
What do you mean I'm an extrovert? Like, I like to hide in my house and be by myself. And, I can be overstimulated, which is true. But I think both of my parents are rather introverted, or maybe they became introverted because of trauma. And when we're traumatized, we may tend to isolate ourselves, and then that becomes our lifestyle. So then it changes who we think we are, right? So all of these years, I'm thinking that I'm introverted, but at the same time, I am exhibiting some qualities of an extroverted person. And perhaps, like we don't need to put ourselves in a box either. It's not either or. It can be both and. So sure, maybe I have some times where I'd rather be a little bit more introverted, but I also have my extroverted. But just like understanding and knowing that, it makes all the difference in the world. And then I can accept that and be okay with that. It's like, okay, this is part of me and who I am. And, I'm not sure that answers your question, but.
No, it's beautiful. And what comes up for me is that nature versus nurture, and that programming that we've had for so long, and how so much of that is formed at such an early age. So, it's not until, and I think you stemmed on it a bit around community, actually having community to help rise you up, so that you can actually sit and contemplate and like you said, not react, and sort of think, actually, what do I thematically, physically feel about that compared to what is being programmed. It's so fascinating. Gosh, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yes.
So do you mostly coach nurses, or are you open to anybody, or?
I am absolutely open to anybody. I love using these tools. It doesn't matter who you are. The niching is, I am a nurse, so I understand, and I understand the lingo. But mostly, I honestly don't coach a whole lot of nurses. I get other people coming in, and I am having more nurses coming in. But nurses don't know about all of this stuff. A lot of nurses don't know about like the self-development, or even understand that it is science-based. They're just, a lot of them are very stuck in that, Western medicine model, and they just follow that. And this is kind of on the other side, and it's challenging to bring it to them.
Yeah, I also see, and no judgment because I was one of, there's a lot of that martyr victim mentality in the caring professions. So it's like, oh, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? So, and it's, you know, what I say is that it's very patriarchal, very outdated, and it's not sustainable. We're, you know, and we use words like burnout, but I actually believe that we're exploiting our frontline workers. You know, we're, and I experienced it, you know, putting guilt on us to fill the roster, and you know, what, you know, your colleague would help you out, and all those sort of things. Lots of eating young. I experienced that myself, and possibly did it back. But it was just so normalised. It was just so, and it was in our face. So, what do you think? What do you think the solution is to create a simple and sustainable health system, education system, and health system?
I think nurses, well, we need to shift the dialogue. We need to shift it to not only say that we are a team, but actually demonstrate it and show people what that looks like. Because I can completely resonate. Like, I have heard managers say, well, this is a team. But then when I go to fall back on my team, nobody's there. So where's the team? You're trying to tell me that there's no I in team, but I seem to have to do everything myself. So, you know, like, the messaging is incongruent. And I think a large piece of that is because we're not actually taught to work as teammates. We're not taught to work really together. It's like, go do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing, and just, you know, leave each other alone. Or, you know, maybe some of them do work in teams, which is very clicky, like high school. You know, high school girls coming together, the mean girls. So they work well together. But not other people. And I mean, it's interesting dynamics with their scheduling, because you have the regular full-time people who are working, and then you have part-time people who are working. And there's just a lack of understanding that processes take time. And in the healthcare industry, they seem to always want to change things. So, you know, like, they're always wanting to change how we're documenting, or changing how we're doing this process, or like whatever it is, like, pick a process, right? And they don't, like, I'll make an example. At the place where I work is a long-term care home, and they decided to change the bowel protocol. Bowel protocol is not abnormal in hospital settings or long-term care, because you have people who are sedentary, they're not moving, and we know that our bowels require physical movement in order for, you know, them to move, right? Not only that, but it's diet as well. Well, you have people in hospitals who are sick, they're not moving, and in long-term care, they're also not moving. So there's basically like this directive of steps to take to help people keep their bowels moving. And it's a process. Well, where I'm working, they decided to change the process, and like, just for like timing, and then, you know, they kind of come down, or complaints happen when the process has only been going on for about 2 months. Like, I should know. Well, if you think about it, I'm part-time, so I work 4 afternoons and 4 days. So from the time that this process was implemented, I had worked 4 shifts. So how did you expect me to pick up on this new process and make sure I'm implementing it in my workday when I've only actually had, I think, 4 or 8 times to practice said new process? It takes 1,000 repetitions to get things going, right? So it's really also having that appreciation and supporting people to be successful. right? So to be successful, I think of my dogs and training my dogs, right? Like it can apply to humans as well. Obviously, I'm not telling humans to walk beside me, but as my dogs are doing what I want them to do, I reward them and say thank you. Or I give reminders, like prompting. So it's like, if you can show up in that workspace, the managers, you want to change a system, then give those reminders. And just reminders, giving that extra support, coming onto the floor and saying, hey, I just wanted to check on this. I know we've got this new process going on. How's it going for you? And what can I do to make it easier for you? How can I help you be successful? Right? That's not the messaging we get. It's like, you're late. There's lots of red things here and you need to get on this and get this done. Very different languaging, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different approach. So like,
I see like solutions there is around feminizing and more compassionate conversations. So just creating. It's almost like ceremony, really. At Heart Place Hospital, we're big on ceremony. We're all about innate wisdom and Indigenous and innovative and that real inner knowing. And that's what carers have. They have that within them. Unfortunately, we've been knocked around a lot. A lot.
Like they're kicking the care right out of us.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, we start calling it things like burnout when it's really like, actually, can you give us a chance? Like, can we meet in the middle here? And that's what we've created here at Heart Place Hospital, is real bespoke support. So I know when I had my MCHt moment nearly 8 years ago, I went to what was available, and it was very one size fits all. And I think, the example that you gave around the change in the protocols is setting some boundaries for sure, and then having some check-ins and saying, hey, how's it going? And I think, I think you referred to it around the team, having that team, like, how's it going? How can we work together? What's going to work for all of us? And I think that's what's really, really super missing in our frontline, is that the actual frontliner, the carer, isn't involved in those conversations. And there's this, there's an international study, the Woodhull study, that shows that where relevant, only 2% of the nurse's story is shared in news and media. And to me, I get a little bit suspicious. I'm kind of like, aren't we the ones that are like hands-in, hands-on? Aren't we the ones, in the actual energetic area of what's going on? Aren't we the ones that are going to come up with solution-focused? And that's, when 90% of our most trusted frontliners are women, and this is not gender at all. It's where our feminine innate wisdom, our inner knowing, our intuition, our physical somatic feelings, our gut feelings. You referred to human design. Lots of people are getting into the human design and actually understanding where their messages hit their body. And I know for me it's my sacral, and it's just as soon as that hits there, I know there's a message coming in. And I can channel that, and every time, you talked about at the beginning, every time you just think, universe has got my back. And I guess and I love that Crystal connected us. She came and stayed here just before Christmas. I think she's actually off to Dubai at the moment. She's quite the nomad.
That woman's everywhere.
She's quite the nomad. And she's a projector by human design. So she's a true projector. And I've lost my train of thought, but I was just thinking, this is where, we go back to bespoke support. This is where we've got to meet people where they're at. And this is what I what I would love for more and more of our frontliners to understand that, and you referred to it, that we might look a little different or quirky, and the more and more of us that actually stand with our backbone and our truth and really embrace our quirky and uniqueness, and give examples of, like when I actually speak up and my voice might be really shaky and wobbly, and I might, my tummy might be really super nervous, I see that these amazing, great, magical and miracles take place. So, and I'm guessing that you're the same as me. I didn't have those examples as a young person in the years that my belief system was being formed. And yeah, it was exactly like you. It took my mat trap moment, and for me to go through my own healing journey to actually go, wow, there's another way. Stop the bus.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And it just the biggest message that I've got is that we are our own best healers. We are our own best lovers, that we have the power within us. Yes, all these tools and all these things are great, and I loved how you talked about the neuro pathways, and if we in business, and I was the same. I've been a bedside nurse, and then I found myself creating workshops just because I was excited. I wanted to share with people these things I was learning, and then I found myself in business, and then which shape shifts all the time. I'm sure it's happening for you too. I'm now a fully registered charity, so whole new neuro pathway.
Absolutely.
So every day, is another line that's been created, and it's my latest ones really is surrender and peace. It's love. It's the trust and faith, and I'm a chameleon. I can easily step back into other worlds and go, rah! But I don't. I've got a choice. I'm a sovereign being, so I've got a choice. I can step into whichever reality I like, and I stay, and I just, even the synchronicity of you and I, two Jackies across the world from one another, talking the same language, and literally Crystal just was like, hook up, and we were like, okay. See what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. What would be something you'd say to like someone who was like what I call them future carers, someone who was thinking to go into a frontline role like nursing or teaching? What's something you'd share with them after your like, I feel like you're a bridge. You're like me, like a bridge. You've had this experience of the two worlds. Yeah. What's something you would share with someone now?
I would tell them, self-love and self-care is the most important, because the old model is to give, and draw blood from a stone. You can't, that's not an effective model. It doesn't work. And when you're caring for other people, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of your energy. So it's really important to know how to love yourself and what that looks like for you, what you need, and just be pouring into yourself while you're doing your caring frontline work. And finding things that really are beneficial for them, right? Like I find people will, and it's different for everybody, but some people will go and get their nails done, or they'll go and get their hair done, and it feels nice, right? Like, sure, it feels good, but that's not exactly self-care, right? Self-care is about managing your energetics, and self-care would also, I would say, include self-development. So it's about that learning about oneself. And I'm coming up with this like model: know you, love you, accept you, and be your authentic self. Because when you're pouring into yourself, that you're learning to know yourself, you're learning to love yourself, you're learning to accept who you are at the core, aside from all of those beliefs that somebody else gave you,
Mm-hmm.
and then be your authentic self, that is pouring into yourself. And that's when you can actually give from an overflowing cup.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's the way I think it needs to shift. That's the way it
Mm-hmm.
needs to go. And it's interesting. I don't know what school for nursing was like for you. I did hear you say eat your young, and that's not the first time I've heard that. And I've actually had nurses as patients who were absolutely horrible. Wow, nurses are the worst patients because, you can't do anything right. And it's quite terrifying for younger new nurses to have to deal with an older nurse. Like it's terrifying. I've been there, and it was not not a pleasant experience for me at all to deal with nurses. Now, from my perspective, where I am now, I get it. I understand. Hurt people hurt people, and that's really what that's all about. But I still get to have my feelings around that. I still get to experience that so that I can process it and move forward. And that's the other piece to self-care, is managing your own emotions. But that all comes to the umbrella of, self-care, self-development, personal growth and development, so that you can be, and I'm going to say it again, instead of react, respond, because life is going to happen. We have an unconscious mind, and then we have the conscious mind. And all that's in the unconscious mind is, stuff that we don't remember. It's that programming from our childhood that we might not be aware of. I hear some people may call it biases, like a bias, a racial bias, or a religious bias, or there's many different biases, pardon me, out there. But that's a part of the unconscious stuff. So the work is really to bring the unconscious to the surface, because life is going to present you with it, right? As Carl Jung,
what you resist persists.
Exactly. You marry your unconscious mind, and then you project onto her all of your unresolved stuff. Well, the world is your unconscious, like that's your projection screen, right? So everything you see out there is just a projection of what's going on in here, right? When people understand that and can start taking responsibility for that, and making the positive changes, then life is going to be so much better for that individual and the people in their world.
Totally, yeah. I loved how you brought up energetics, because at Heart Place Hospital we meet people where they're at. So sometimes it is self-care. Sometimes people haven't even had, understood how to breathe, or how to pause, or how to notice what they're noticing, or actually drop down into their body. And that was certainly my experience. Like, I literally was a head walking around this world for 4 decades until I started my own healing journey and learned to embody. And then you've talked about mindset. So we've sort of got the self-care where we can calm that nervous system. That was my story. I hadn't been in the parasympathetic nervous system. I never remembered ever being in it until I got it. And when I first experienced it, I sat up with the energy healer that I was working with, and I said, what is this feeling? And she said to me, it's your parasympathetic nervous system. And I was like, I like it. So I think that's the first step, is supporting people with nervous system regulation. And we're not doing that. We're not normalizing that. Speaking generally, seeing a lot more families doing that, and you've talked about your grandson, which is beautiful. Then there's the mindset, so really creating space to actually go, well, what is it that I do know? And I've quite switched my belief system to my knowing system. I have this inner knowing, like I know stuff that I don't know how I know. And I've Googled it, and it's not even in Google, but I know it's to be true. And I know this to be true for me, is that that intergenerational trauma, there's also intergenerational knowledge. And that's what's, as I heal my trauma wounds, my boundary wounds, and learn to advocate for myself and others and craft a life that best suits me, then my inner knowing fills in those gaps that we're blocking. And then finally, it's the energetics, and you mentioned that. And, you know, when I first started this work, I was like, oh, yeah, pedicures and happy thoughts, easy peasy. But that energetics is so important to really energetically install that into our physical body. So I'm really doing embodiment work. And at Heart Place Hospital, we've got service providers who touch all three of those areas, so very multidimensional, multifaceted. So we all end up, and I'm the same. I'm not immune. I've got a healing round table, and I use my intuition and my inner knowing to who's on that healing round table, and they pop in at our chairs, and we use conscious uncoupling. And I say, hey, I need a little bit more of this at the moment. I need some more of this. And I used to have a mindset of, oh, I can't afford that. Whereas now I have a mindset, I can't not afford it. And every time I invest in that part of me, because we're so multidimensional, every time I invest in that part of me, I have this amazing rise or growth in another part, and I go, and I've just always don't forget to invest in yourself. Don't forget. And I think it's really, I call you a leader, Jacqui. I think it's us leaders who are the bridges. It's important that we show up and go, we invest in ourselves. We've got healing round tables, and be criminal, absolute criminal, if we didn't show up in the world and share our life learnings. And that's how it used to be. That's how I talk about inner wisdom. This is how it used to be. We had women's circles. Men were part of that. They were our protectors. They kept us protected so that we could sit in circle, and we could share the good, bad, and ugly without any judgment, and we could alchemize the shit out of it. And we would create spaces. We'd get all these amazing downloads, and then turn to the men and say, hey, we need to move the village to the left or to the east, or we need to grow over here. And more of that knowledge is coming through. And I just think it's so important that we can normalise this into our frontliners, not just for them, absolutely for them, for sure, because we've been there, and it's awful, it's icky. But for those who they're ripple affecting the care off to. And I just think it's just such a fast way for our world to evolve, that we get one carer who's in front of, sometimes 30, 40, 50 people a day. They go home to, and they pass, 10, 20, 30 people themselves a day. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And I think once a nurse, you're always a nurse. I support nurses who now work in retail, and I just think, they're still in the front line. They've still got this inner knowing, this wisdom, this knowledge, this experience, and we don't want to lose them. We want to, if it's behind a till, they're still imparting knowledge, and they're still sharing their energy. So there's kind of no criteria, really. Care is a carer. Yeah, we're all born. We're born to care. It's just no longer will we tolerate not having the value and the respect and the care that we deserve back. Yeah. Oh, well, lovely to talk to you, and talk to you again soon.